Well, good afternoon, everybody. Ooh. And welcome to our second community conversation. My name is Catherine Walsh, I'm the Director of Veterans SA, and I'd like to welcome you all today. I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the land of the Kaurna people, and I want to extend on behalf of us all our respects to the traditional owners and their elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge that we are being live streamed and also on your behalf acknowledge that you are also joining us from the lands of our traditional owners as well. So thank you for joining us today. The purpose of the community conversations, which started last month, is an opportunity for the veteran community in South Australia to come together to share information and to enable discussion on matters that are important to our community. So after our last community conversation, I'd like to thank those who provided suggestions of future topics, and they are certainly in the mix for us to consider and to explore over the coming months. Now, today's community conversation has come about from feedback from the community, directly from you. From those who are interested in what the footprint is of the ex-service community across 3 state government sites, which seem in their own right to be probably quite separate, but hopefully by the end of our hour together today, that you'll see that whilst they have different focuses and different purposes, that they are all here to do one thing, and that is to support our shared community of veterans and veterans' families in South Australia. So this is the culmination of some work that my colleagues, who I'll introduce in a minute, and I have been undertaking over the last several months. We're essentially going to synthesise information that is already in the public domain. I acknowledge that some of it is sometimes a little bit less easy to find than it could be, but certainly also to show how we work together again for the betterment of our community and how there are synergies between each of the sites. So when I'm talking about the sites, I'm talking about the Partnerships Hub, which is co-located with the Jamie Larkham Centre at Glenside, about the Veterans Wellbeing Centre, which will operate off of the former repat, and also here, the Torrance Precinct. And I acknowledge as well that we are meeting in the Memorial Hall, which is the heartbeat of RSL South Australia. We'll have about 45 minutes for discussion, and then there'll be a 15-minute opportunity for questions at the end. We are live streaming, as I mentioned, and questions can be asked through the comments box on YouTube. And when you see me looking at my mobile phone, it's because I'll have some of those questions texted to me. And then we'll also have a lovely, healthy audience here who can answer questions face to face. We will have a roving mic, so just put up your hand at the end for those here in the room, and we'll come to you in turn. If you don't have your question answered today, or you think of a question afterwards, you can always email us on veteranssa@sa.gov.au. Now, without further ado, I am really delighted to introduce you to my state government colleagues and the panel today. Beverly Voigt. Beverly is the manager of Heritage SA, which is within the Department of Environment and Water. Now, the role of Heritage SA is to protect, conserve and promote our state heritage places and also SA shipwrecks. In 2019, the Torrance Parade Ground was transferred to the Minister for Environment and Water, and this site, together with 12 other significant heritage places, such as Ayres House, Cummins House and the Science Exchange, are all under Bev's portfolio. So welcome, Bev. I'd also like to introduce Adam Munkhouse. He is the Program Manager of Chronic and Complex Care. That takes a bit of getting your mouth around it. Of Chronic and Complex Care within the Health Services Programs and Funding Branch of the Department of Health and Wellbeing. Now, Adam's work has spanned policy, strategy and funding in health for over 15 years, and he has been engaged with the veteran community over a number of years with involvement in the Veterans Health Framework, the establishment of the Jamie Larkham Centre, and more recently with the repat Veteran Wellbeing Centre. And of course, I'm Catherine Walsh, the Director of Veterans SA. My agency's role is threefold. Firstly, to influence across both state and federal government for the betterment of our community. Secondly, is to help facilitate collaboration across the veteran community to ensure that the right supports and services are available at the right time for those who need them. And then the third part is how to help 1.7 million South Australians understand the value of military experience in contributing to the South Australian community right here and right now. So, just to start us off, I might start with you, Adam, and then you'll get the same question straight away afterwards, Bev. Can each of you spend about 2 minutes explaining a little more about how you work with the veteran community, how you work with Veterans SA, and what that looks like in a practical sense?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Kaurna people. I think the health system, the public health system, has had a long and rich history supporting veterans in South Australia. Obviously, we've had the Repat Hospital, significant, important component of veterans' healthcare. Providing services, hospital services, and the public health system, I think, provides obviously a broad range of health and hospital services, not just to the veterans community, to the whole of the South Australian community. But veterans has always been an important focus, and for our department, engaging with the ESOs, engaging with the community, having a Veterans Health Advisory Council which provides advice directly to the Minister, and that's been around for approximately 10 years now. For a significant amount of that time, we've been the only jurisdiction in Australia to have a framework for veterans healthcare. I'm not sure if we still are the only ones, but we are just about to go into a refresh of that framework as well. All of these things point to the fact that we acknowledge the unique issues that veterans have as a result of their military service, and we acknowledge the need to make sure that we can provide the services to support them. I think we've also had a long-standing relationship with DVA, and obviously commemoration and memorialisation is an important aspect of the health system as well, as you'd see through things like the memorialisation services like Anzac Day just gone at the Repat that Darren Renshaw, who many of you would know, has been running for many years successfully. So for us, I think we have an operational aspect, but we also have a policy aspect, and I think that's where our relationship comes in between the Department of Health and Wellbeing and Veterans SA, working together at that system level to make sure we're identifying the needs of veterans and making sure that we're giving the government the best advice to develop strategies to be able to meet those needs.
Wonderful. Thanks, Adam. Now, Bev, just to refresh the question then, if you can explain a little bit more about how you work with the veterans community, how you work with us, and what does that look like?
Hello, everyone. So the main role my branch up until recently has been in working with the veterans community is around listing and protection of places that might represent the values of the veteran community. So Torrance Parade Ground is an example of that. In recent years we listed a place at Keswick as well. So that was historically probably our predominant role, and the education of the community around why those places are important to us as a community. More recently, with us being custodians of this place as a state heritage place, the mandate and relationship has extended in that we are now landlords, I guess, and we take care of this place. And it, to us, is important because of its history, but also because it's heritage. So there's a dual relationship in my role as a manager to look after this place. And we have Yarsek, who many of you might know, who is our site manager on site, who works closely with all the tenants to work and support you in the events that you have here, and the other community users that come in. And so that's where my relationship with Veterans SA has come in that the Premier has a particular vision for this site, and I've been working closely with Veterans SA to support that and realise that. Also work with tenants about how we can respectfully service their needs, but also recognise that heritage and historic buildings cost a lot of money. So how do you activate them and bring in revenue to maintain the building in the way that needs to happen to do that? Like, for example, the tarmac out the front could cost over $1 million to replace, and how do we fund those type of things?
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thanks for that, Bev. And I think that just to make sure, because we've got an eclectic audience here, when we start talking about Torrance, just to make sure that we have a common understanding, the Torrance Precinct, we mean this building that houses the drill hall next door, this memorial hall where we meet, and a number of tenancies, as well as the parade ground. But often when we talk about the Torrance Precinct, we can also be referring to the memorials that encircle the parade ground. So we've got, of course, the Air Force Memorial, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Memorial, and up here on the back fence of Government House, we have the Pathway of Honour. Is all of this the responsibility of DEW?
So the maintenance responsibility, no, that's quite separate in that our role is very much around this building and the Torrance Parade ground out the front and all the activities and events that happen on that ground. The actual memorials and all the grasslands around that is the responsibility of the City of Adelaide. So we have a close working relationship with the City of Adelaide, and we, for example, we've had an issue with the big tree out the side and doing stormwater, which we'll talk about shortly, and working with them to negotiate a good outcome where we could get our outcomes met, but they also look after their areas of responsibility. My team also do development applications for heritage places, so there is a role where some of the things around the memorial walk, we were actively engaged in some of the decision making around moving of the Dardanelles memorial and those type of things, and getting some of that stuff working with the heritage architects. So there's that role as well, but it's we don't have maintenance responsibility for those memorials.
Yeah, right. But I hear that you've got a great working relationship with the City of Adelaide.
Yeah.
So recognising that, again, they're part of our community to help support our shared community here, that's really reassuring to hear. So you just alluded to, stormwater, and we'll talk about that in a moment, as exciting as stormwater is. But there are a number of improvements that are planned for the drill hall and the Torrance Precinct over the coming months. And I know that Department of Environment and Water have been keeping tenants appraised, as well as those who are interested, looking to book to hire the parade ground or the drill hall, and what the impact of those works will mean. And now, this is a result of a budget commitment that the state government made in last year's budget in October. Bev, can you step us through what that commitment was and a bit of a timeline of the works and what it's going to look like at the end?
Yeah, so the commitment was around trying to create, reinforce the Premier's vision about this being a busy place with veterans at the hub. And so that's always been the driver behind some of this work. And it was about particularly the drill hall space, and so some of the you who occupy here or have visited here is the last couple of years the drill hall's been buckling, and the cause of that was the stormwater that was going underneath, and I don't know why the stormwater was going under the drill hall, but that's how it was designed, and so that was starting to leak, age I guess, and the drill hall started to buckle. So we fixed that up through our processes and insurance, but we realised that we needed to redirect the stormwater. So we worked with veterans to go to Cabinet to get funding for support to recognise how we can use the drill hall in a better way, because it's a huge space, and quite often when we use it, it kind of is a bit overwhelming because of the space, but there's opportunities for having large events, but also potentially have dual events in there. So we were looking at how do we do that, and so that's part of where the money has come to say, well, let's make that space more usable and public friendly, so that tenants can use it, the veterans community can use it in different ways, and we can socialise it in ways that, maybe with this type of event where we can actually have the regional presence coming in and participating in events, and so that's part of it. So it was also looking at kind of refreshing some of the kind of more boring stuff, but things that need to happen with dividing the drill hall to create two spaces is we need new toilets. We actually, to meet the building code requirements, we actually need more toilets in the northern end of the building. So we've actually been working with a heritage architect to design what a drill hall in that split could look like and work and operate within the constraints of the building code, with the air conditioning and the lighting and all those things that already exist, and have it function and within the budget that was given to us. So we've been having to do some trades to kind of fit it into the budget, because things are costing a bit more than they might have cost 12 months ago. But we've come up with a creative solution. So what we're working towards in the next 12 months is we're in the process of finalising designs for the petition. It's going to be a flexible petition, so we can still have it open up. We can close it so that that's soundproof, so that we can have 2 separate events at the northern end and the southern end with their own toilets and kitchen. And we still can have the tenants still being able to use the space in the way that they need to use the space. So we're still cognizant that, we've got tenants over in the northern end that need to still be able to access their toilets and operate. So we're thinking those things through. The thing that we are working on immediately, because we had the design briefs in scope, was the stormwater. We recognise that there are slight disruptions with how tenants are occupying the place, particularly the History Trust. However, we have to do it. It's essential work. Winter's coming. We're trying to do it with the least impacts on individuals. We've stopped doing bookings during those busy periods, but recognising that we have lots of important events coming up. So we're staging the stormwater and all the different events around those important bookings, and doing what we can to remove the blockades and all those things to give those events the best outcome we can. So Yasek's doing his best to communicate those things, and work, and Kirsty, who's my other staff person that works with the stormwater project, to minimise the disruption to tenants here and the bookings as we go forward.
Great. So if I can just sort of summarise that, the budget commitment last year, which was the first stage of the government's commitment to improvements here, is essentially looking to improve the utility of the cavernous drill hall here, with a petition that, when it is pulled across, has 2 separate soundproof areas. Yep. So there'll be some work up on the rafters as well to help complement the dragging screen, but also for events like the one that was recently held for the Centenary of Air Force function, the whole drill hall could equally be booked out. Yeah. So that improves utility, and then there's some public accessibility pieces, which, as you point out, are perhaps a little boring, but are essential for compliance for code, but also improve the amenity of the space as well, for you to be able to access toilets on your side of the drill hall. Mm-hmm. So would that be a pretty good summary? And then you're just keeping tenants appraised as you need to, as time frames continue. So that's great. Well, thanks for that, Bev. And I guess that's a really important segue to perhaps putting in context what that $1.2 million that was committed in last year's budget looks like within, you've mentioned the Premier's vision. So the Premier is a strong supporter of recognising that Torrance is steeped in our South Australian history as well as our military history. And when we talk about his vision is for this to be a busy place with veterans at the centre. So in recognition of this vision, in July 2019, the Premier committed to the development of a master plan for Torrance. Now, this involved a close partnership with DEW, because necessarily, as you pointed out, Bev, you're the landlords, and also with Grieve Giller Anderson, who are an architectural firm who have very strong credentials in historical site refurbishment, but also, I believe, were involved in the refurbishment of Torrance back in about 2004, I want to say. So this, so at least a good 15, 17 years ago. And that was after the federal government transferred ownership of this site to the state government, which was about 2001. 2000, right. So the brief of the master plan was deliberately broad to identify how to meet that vision of making this a busy place with veterans at the centre. So that enabled a creative approach to see what the art of the possible would be. And to be honest, when that master plan was delivered to government in July 2020, when it was finalised, there was a lot to consider, and a number of components were indeed quite creative, and also not completely within the sole responsibility of state government, because as you said, Bev, we're surrounded by City of Adelaide land, and there is, whilst we in government clearly can define what our purview is, for the veteran community, it just flows. It flows from the parade ground to the parklands around us where our memorials are situated. So the government's commitment to the first stage of investment in Torrance was in October last year for the budget commitment, and that further funding considerations are available to the government, and that will be informed by the needs of the community. So what does all of that mean if I speak plainly about it? So essentially the master plan has informed some government thinking, and it has provided a wide range of options of what could be possible, but that also inspires the conversations that Veterans SA has had and will continue to have with sections of the community. And then investment, of course, will be a future decision of government. So the Veterans Advisory Board also created a subcommittee around Torrance when we were starting to talk to current tenants and some other key stakeholders in the veteran community in middle to late last year. And they established a set of principles to help guide government, so essentially Bev's team and my team's thinking around what could future possibilities and investment in the Torrance Precinct look like. And I'm really delighted to say that's a sort of a guiding star that informs the conversations that we have had and that we will continue to have. So to give you a sense of what some of those principles look like, and then as I sort of list off, I've only got chosen a sample of 3 or 4, hopefully you can see how that fits in with the description of what Bev just gave us around this first stage of works. So that is that Torrance should always aspire to be an inclusive precinct, deeply connected to all parts of the South Australian community, and that the value of what happens at Torrance is found in the stories that they tell about people and organisations in, from and within South Australia, particularly the voices that are not always heard. So that inclusivity piece is certainly around making sure that there is greater amenity in the drill hall, so you can use 2 parts of it, not just one, and then that enables a much wider range of people to be able to use spaces that are smaller and more appropriate to what their events and activities are. The Torrance Precinct elements are to be accessible and usable as much as possible to a diverse range of people within the veteran community and the broader South Australian community, which again is in that same vision. In encouraging connections with the South Australian community, the Torrance Precinct should value partnerships with like-minded public and private sector institutions and organisations which have purposes that are consistent with the purposes of the precinct. And I'll come and ask you a question about that in a moment, Bev, around how, when you're the booking manager for the parade ground as well as the drill hall, how do you make sure that that principle around commonality and purpose and inspiration remains pure? And that Torrance should be integrated with other veteran-related developments, so these various sites and activities are mutually supporting and not duplicative. And hopefully with the 3 of us here today to talk about our respective sites is exactly that. We are an ecosystem. There are 3 very distinct state government sites that support the veteran community, and certainly we each converse on a regular basis to ensure that they are mutually supportive and that they are not duplicative. So at the end of the day, the state government is working to realise the best solutions for a variety of stakeholders, and this does take some time and it does take numerous conversations. I've got to be honest, that is an imperfect approach, but it is where we are, and certainly I can give you a commitment that since I joined Veterans SA a year ago last week, I was reminded, then I've certainly had a number of conversations with tenants in this building and with other key stakeholders in the veteran community, which is what informed the government investment in the budget in October, and that is just the beginning. The future investment will of course be informed by consultation with the community. So in light of that, which I hope sort of describes the Premier's vision over the top of the practicalities of what we're seeing at the moment, how can you describe to us, Bev, how the decision making works when people apply to book the parade ground or the drill hall in here, and what those guiding principles are to make sure that the service and sacrifice that this precinct embodies and imbues remains pure.
Yep. So one of the first things that we do on an annual basis is that we go to all the tenants here and we ask for their bookings 12 months in advance so that they get the priority bookings. So that's always the first principle, is to give tenants and the veterans here first rights. So that's our first practice. And our principle is recognising that we also are looking at bringing in revenue to offset some of the conservation works that are required. We recognise that there has to be some level of trade between bringing in the revenue and making it a busy place to pay for some of those things. For example, our electricity bills for this site over the year is about $45,000 a year, so it's costly to run. And I think the drill hall in itself is $1,000 a day when the air conditioner is running, or something crazy. It's quite high. So when we get bookings, we do the first thing we ask is it a booking from a veterans community? So we do a check of how does it fit, and it might not always look like it fits, but it could be that it's more about cultural pursuits. So I mean, that's another thing that the Premier was also very keen around, is recognising the cultural aspects of the city and bringing the city to life. So some of the events on the Torrance Parade ground may not see a close connect to the veterans community, but they're not a disconnect either, because they're about being busy and about bringing Adelaide to life, and it brings people here and it gets them to think about things as well. So I think there's value in bringing those young people to go, oh, what is this place? What's this place mean? So there's educational opportunities that come from some of the events. So for example, we've got Winter Village, which has just been published. That's going to be at the whatever that end of western end of the parade ground for 16 weeks, and that's going to be quite exciting for Adelaide, in that I think it will create that busyness that the Premier is looking for at this site, and it will bring families and the community to looking at using that in, so it's little igloos with ice skating and things like that. So it doesn't necessarily fit, but as I said, it's not a disconnect because it's about cultural. So we do make decisions. So we do not take private bookings or weddings or any of those things that kind of devalue or disrespect the building. So we're choosing not to do any of those type of events. That's always been very clear. So we think about when there's something that's come in that isn't a normal booking, that is a booking that has never been accepted in the past. We'll do some analysis about whether we think it's a right fit or not, and we'll make decisions to say no when they don't. So that's kind of how we do it. And as I said, it's always intended that tenants get the first opportunity. We discount or give often the tenants at no charge to the use of the drill hall. So that's one of the things where we try and recognise the trade of saying, well, yeah, we need to do some commercial activities, but we recognise and give you pro bono.
And that's a great finishing note to talk about the fact that support to the veteran community can come in a variety of ways, shapes and forms as well. So Bev, I'll give you a rest for a moment, and Adam, I think we'll turn to you now. So you and your team have been working hard over the last 12 months to establish the Veterans Wellbeing Centre down at the former Repat site. Can you tell us a bit about how that idea came about and what will be the Veterans Wellbeing Centre?
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to. So I guess the way it came about, prior to the last federal election, the coalition government made an election commitment for 6 veteran wellbeing centres around the country, a commitment of $5 million for each centre. and South Australia was privileged to get one of those centres to be established here. The timing of that, I think, was fortuitous in that the state government was embarking on a direction of reactivating the repat. And I don't need to tell you all here the importance of the repat as a site to the veteran community. So the opportunity came to, I guess, tie these two things in together. And it would see the opportunity to have in the centre of the reactivated repat a service offering and a place where veterans could go and create a community and create an opportunity to be part of that site again on a daily basis. So bringing those two things together then, SA Health under the Minister for Health and Wellbeing, obviously this is a wellbeing centre, so it's within that portfolio. We took it upon ourselves to connect with the community and to engage the community to understand some of the needs and to help to design and come up with the parameters for the centre. So there were two aspects to that, and I might just go through the process a little bit, and then I think that'll lead us sort of into the kind of where we landed and what the centre actually looks like. So the first side of that was the capital design and the capital building works. So we engaged with the community. We had existing sites, a brownfield site. Obviously, as you're all aware, there's a number of existing buildings. A number of them are getting knocked down. A number of them are getting rebuilt, etc. And there's a building that was identified, the Sleep Studies building, which is directly south from the entrance of the SPF Hall. The SPF Hall, along with the museum, the chapel and the Remembrance Gardens, are obviously significant community assets of importance to the veteran community and will be protected. And so the opportunity to turn the Sleep Centre into the Wellbeing Centre kind of put veterans and this centre right smack in the middle of, I guess, what we could call a bit of a veterans precinct. Again, somewhat fortuitously, that edges right onto, in some of the sort of broader concept master plan for the repat site, the town square, the gardens and the gymnasium. There's a cafe in one of the wings of the SPF Hall, and really this is going to be the kind of like the heart of the precinct, the heart and the soul of the precinct. And it's really pleasing to see that the veteran community are just smack bang in the middle of that and will be so engaged and connected as the community develops and as this site reactivates. So we engaged with the community on the capital design and also took to setting up a steering committee so that we made sure we had important veterans-led governance. So we have Veterans SA on that. We've got RSL SA&T State Branch. We've got some veteran community representatives as well as other organisations. And working very closely with Veterans Health Advisory Council, as we do with everything in health, to make sure that the Minister is getting the best advice from the community. So the capital design kind of progressed, saying, here's a building, this is what we can do with it. What's the best way to maximise the use of this building and the space? Because one thing that we do know in the veteran community is that there are a lot of buildings. There are a lot of RSL halls all throughout South Australia and other halls and other spaces. So we wanted to try and think about, well, how does this site and how does this building itself meet the service needs? So in parallel to that, we looked at what the service design and the mix would be. That started with a conversation about wellbeing and how do you define wellbeing, and this is something that's a lot broader than just my team. It's work that we've done in the state government and nationally over many years to define wellbeing, because it can be a very broad term. But we worked with DVA and the other centres nationally to come up with a definition and to try and identify, I guess, what the elements of wellbeing would be that we'd look to meet so that we can meet the needs of veterans in the centre. So some of those things include physical health, advocacy, mental health, education and employment, social support and connection, housing and accommodation, financial wellbeing, and community building. And then in terms of our service mix, we also thought it was really important to maintain the elements of recognition and respect and memorialisation, and we also wanted to think about what a research component might look like within the centre as well, to make sure that we know that what we're actually doing is making a difference. So we took it looking at the broad landscape and also the Partnership Hub and the work that we've already done in providing wellbeing services to veterans. We looked at an approach for establishing a service provider presence at the centre. It was clear that for some services that SA Health provides, for example, for mental health services, it didn't make a lot of sense to move those out of, say, Jamie Larkham Centre, where you have the kind of the nexus of the nursing and the medical staff and the allied health staff together in one space where they can build and learn and connect with each other. So what we looked at instead is actually connecting with the ESO sector and how would we bring some of those services in. We have a bit of a kind of triangle diagram for at the top. We have a few services which we would look at service providers as the anchor tenants. And these are really the providers that would be in the centre on a day-to-day basis. Then you'd move down to a connected kind of in-reach group of services that would come in, maybe use the hall, maybe use one of the consulting rooms once a week. For example, you might have a financial counsellor who has an afternoon that could be booked there for services to be provided. And then you've got the really broad referral and connection across to all of the existing services that we know that are out there and that are mapped and that we also already have previous experience in through people like Partnerships Hub Coordinator and the Veterans Health Advocate in connecting people to the services that they need. We undertook a request for information with a targeted group of ex-service organisations and we're really pleased to announce, I think it was in October last year, the 4 veterans organisations, service providers that we'd have as our tenants, our main tenants in the centre, those being Open Arms, Soldier On, RSL SANT, the state branch, Plimpton Veterans Centre. And actually once we mapped the services they provide across against the wellbeing domains, it was really exciting to see that we ticked off almost everything, or at least once we took into account the way that we'd have the referral pathways, we could really meet a lot of those needs. Further to that, we also looked at an expression of interest process broadly, to which we received 18 submissions from a range of different organisations, which would look at those in-reach organisations and those ones that would come into the centre as well. And I guess the reason I sort of talk through the process is because I'm trying to illustrate the way in which we didn't want to duplicate. We wanted to go and find out who was out there, who was providing what services, how we were going to work together as a community and in partnership. And really where we landed, and I think the broader kind of idea or the concept for these sites is that one-stop shop concept. And that's what we're really hoping to do. That's what we've kind of got the idea about, and we're hoping that the service providers with the service mix and the referral pathways and the work that we do behind the scenes will really create that seamless opportunity and that front door for the veteran community, for veterans and their families to get the services that they need.
Wow, that's a lot of information. And a lot of that information and thank you for describing that process, Adam. A lot of that information is available on the Veterans Portal on the SA Health website, is it not?
Yeah,
so what we'll ensure is that because we're live streaming and this is also being recorded, we'll make sure that links to the Veterans Portal on the SA Health website are available. And that's also where updates are going to be, I'm assuming, over the coming months around the Wellbeing Centre.
Yep.
Now, you touched on and mentioned the Partnerships Hub, which was developed as part of the model of care when the Jamie Larkham Centre opened in Glenside a few years ago. So, of course, the clinical aspects are the purview of the JLC, and the Partnerships Hub recognised that people have a variety of other needs to ensure their well-being, and the Partnership Hub coordinator was about those non-clinical aspects and helping people navigate to what they need at that time. What is the vision of the relationship between the Partnerships Hub and the Veterans Wellbeing Centre?
I think we were really lucky in having had the experience of developing the Partnership Hub at the Jamie Larkham Centre at the Glenside campus because it provided an immediate basis for us to have lessons learned and to have practical experience in trying to develop this wellbeing centre. So throughout the whole process of us designing and identifying how we're going to deliver the services through the Wellbeing Centre, we've been able to pick up on our experiences from the Partnership Hub. And so, you know, that was our approach, was to think about what we'd done there, to review that work, to talk to our community, to talk to the people, including Veterans SA, who auspice the position of the Partnership Hub Coordinator, and our long-standing relationship in jointly delivering that service, to really understand, well, how has that worked? You know, and Catherine, having come into the role a year ago today, I guess was also, last week, was also on a journey of discovery with, okay, what's this thing we've got called the Partnership Hub? And so together, I suppose, we were able to say, well, what can we learn from where that started, what the vision was, and where it is now, and where it will be in the future. One of the most critical things that we identified is that we always want to maintain a service offering for the veterans, the vulnerable veterans, who use the Jamie Larkham Centre, both inpatients and outpatients. And so we know that was kind of originally the intent, and the model of care for the Jamie Larkham Centre included this non-clinical offering, this social support, and it's critical for us to make sure that any model of different services going forward will continue to support that vulnerable community that is being cared for through the JLC. But I guess the other really big lesson that we learned is, again, that it's not just a building. So you can put a building together, and I think when we had the idea for the Partnerships Hub, we had some really great excitement from the ESO community. Everybody was excited about this new potential opportunity. But once we actually had boots on the ground and we were rolling, it became hang on a minute. No, this is just a bit of a building that's not quite fit for purpose. I'm not actually sure what I might do with my ESO there versus where I currently am. How's this going to work? Now, we were incredibly lucky, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of Justin Brown as the previous Partnership Hub Coordinator. We had somebody in there who gave it his everything to make that work. And that has got us so far down the track of understanding how we actually have to develop that service offering for the community. And probably the biggest thing that we've realised is the referral pathways, is understanding, mapping out the services that are available and having those connections so that we can address the needs then and there of a person who comes to us saying, I need some help. So all of those kind of lessons, I suppose, have been integrated into the work we've been doing with the centre, which you can see through things like having the expression of interest process to get the anchor tenants on board and actually get organisations to come and put their hand up and say, we want to be part of this. By having the veterans-led governance, which, you know, got the veterans having the voice in designing and making sure that we were on the right track. I guess I'd wrap that question up really by saying here are two really sort of similar spaces, and to not work together would be silly. So, you know, we need to continue to kind of map out what that looks like, and we will once we get things up and running at the Veteran Wellbeing Centre. We continue. We've got someone new, Anne Minion, who's now in the Partnership Hub role coordinator. And together we meet regularly, and we'll continue to meet and look at what the services look like across those sites.
Great, thanks Adam. So I'm hearing that it's going to be iterative over the coming weeks and months, certainly as the Wellbeing Centre really gets its sort of feet under the desk, so to speak. So if I can conclude with a last question for you then, Adam, what in practical terms will the veteran community be seeing over the next 3 to 6 months physically at the Wellbeing Centre site, and that iterative process of the common relationship and partnership between the hub and the Wellbeing Centre for the betterment of our community? Yeah,
for sure. So as some of you would have seen, and some of you were there, as familiar faces in the room, that the REPAT Veteran Wellbeing Centre building was officially launched on Sunday the 18th of April, and that the Minister and a couple of local and federal members of Parliament were there for, I suppose, an official building opening. we have some further work to do just from a capital point of view in terms of some sewerage in the entryway. Because that was going to take up a large portion of the entry point for the community to get through, we made the decision that it wouldn't be practical to actually have people attending the site and trying to work their way through a building site to get to the front door. And so that's why we set the service opening date as the beginning of June. So that will allow us the time to have that works finished, the service providers move in, and the services are provided and the front door is open. And you know, we hope that we've communicated that, but I'd encourage you please to share that with your constituents and your communities from the 1st of June. You know, we definitely are keen to have people connecting with the centre. And please check our website and the websites and information from some of the tenants, Soldier On, Open Arms, RSL, SANT and Plimpton as well, to get further information on those individual services and how we'll all work together. So the 4 anchor tenants will move in. Really, we're going to look at a period of settling in and seeing how we work together. Probably one of the most exciting things from a veteran community point of view is we've got 4 organisations all, you know, joining together in the same building. And we're really committed to seeing that partnership approach work. And, you know, it's great to see everyone with a shared vision and a shared goal and working towards meeting that. The broader site then will continue to evolve. We've got the central kind of community garden, the gymnasium, the cafe. That stuff's going to be up and running in November, end of October, start of November. And at that point will be a further rejuvenation of the site and the centre for us. So another chance to celebrate and to kind of go out there and fly our flag to the broader community and say, hey, check this out. Here we are right here in the middle of this revitalised precinct. And, you know, over time, that's when we'll start to see, you know, conversations we've had with people like organisations like Soldier On, organisations like Invictus Pathways Program, about getting social events, support, using the gymnasium, you know, getting bike rides that end up there afterwards and have a coffee in the cafe, those types of things. So really creating that social community type aspect. And that's where the site will continue to grow and develop and be really exciting. And I know that everybody that I spoke to Sunday, a couple of weeks ago, who was standing there right in the middle between the centre and the hall, and yeah, looking out onto the town square. It's a construction site at the moment, but you could feel the potential. You know, you could feel how alive the site's going to be once it's finished.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, Adam and Bev. And certainly we've covered a lot of ground in the last 45 minutes, but I hope that it's clear to you around the collaboration that certainly the 3 of us and our teams have with each other, and that if it's Torrance, if it's the Partnerships Hub at Glenside, or if it's the Wellbeing Centre down at the former REPAT, that there is a clear commemorative piece that we as state government are really alive to, how to make social connectivity within the veteran community and within the South Australian community at large is really important as well. And that we are all in lockstep around making sure that we can come up with the best solutions for a wide variety of stakeholders. So on that note, I'm happy to invite questions. Becca, you're going to have the mic. So I can see Dion at the back first, and then I think I see Robert second.
Adam, I guess this question would be for you. Just as a member of the veteran community, I was just wondering if there's going to be an intensive marketing campaign around just getting that information out to all of those veterans who maybe aren't part of ESOs and things like that. They might be part of ESOs, but they don't have their finger on the pulse. Just wondering if there's going to be some sort of campaign just to really inform those people and even just to draw them in to have them take up those opportunities of the services and everything that's going to be offered.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's a really necessary piece. We've kind of talked about the front door, the physical front door, and the virtual front door as well. And so we've actually just engaged a communications contractor last Monday who'll be working on that piece. It's a balance between identifying the Repat Wellbeing Centre as its own entity and identifying the services. You know, Soldier On, Open Arms, these guys have their own identity. You know, they've got their own phone numbers and access pathways. So it's a little bit of jigsaw, a little bit of a tricky piece to put that all together. But that's exactly the piece we're doing right now. And then, you know, what that looks like in terms of a flyer, a poster. There'll be some broad, you know, mail out type information. So the Repat team do a mail out to 360,000 residents in the southern Adelaide area. The next one of those is going to be focused on the Veteran Wellbeing Precinct. And then, you know, using all of those channels, so social media, etc. Yeah. Thank you.
Exciting to see.
And certainly the Veterans SA monthly e-news and social media channels are also where you can get that information as well. Sorry, gratuitous plug. Robert.
Robert Black, is this on?
Yep.
I'm the president of the Air Force Association, and we are one of the tenants here. You call them stakeholders. And one of the things that we may be doing is trying to firmly hold firmly our stake in this place. And when people are talking about who might else come here, we are a little bit anxious. Not much, because you've reassured us that things won't happen too much upstairs where we are. But we wonder whether this might be an opportunity for those Johnny-come-latelys who come down here might be given a fairly low rental, because our rental has been exorbitant for the 20 years that we've been here. Thank you, Catherine, for inviting us all and attempting to explain to us all what is going to happen. And good luck, because I think that there are a lot of uncertainties ahead of us. You have had 3 speakers, and you are all from different departments, and you all have a different minister. And that must represent a problem, which I hope that you'll overcome. But it does seem extraordinary that we have to have 3 departments working on areas that are involved in veterans' matters. Look, when you've written a summary about this, which I hope that you'll send to us, I hope that it will include something about the nomenclature of the place or places that are here. You've mentioned the term, for example, of the Torrance Precinct. I've never used that term, and it's comparatively new to me. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but we tend to say Torrance Parade Ground, and we may mean anything from parking space out there to drill hall occupation or offices up there. It would be helpful, I think, to have some careful definitions of what we're talking about and where we're talking about. And as Bev has explained to us, there are places here that are not looked after by any of your departments. They're looked after by the Adelaide City Council. So there's another problem. And I haven't even mentioned that there's a Commonwealth Department of Veterans Affairs who surely is a stakeholder in what we're talking about. So all I can say is thank you, good luck in what is happening, and please tell us exactly which parts we're talking about, because I think, for instance, this building, which is a wonderful building, and even it wasn't a Commonwealth building, it was a building from the South Australian colony, which was given to the Commonwealth, and they handed it back 20 or so years ago. But what's the name of this building as opposed to Parade Ground? There is a name, and some people have used the term Anzac House. I think that was the term that was used for the RSL's headquarters in the city. So it'd be nice to see exactly what we're talking about so that we can discuss what might happen from here and there. So thank you for those comments. A quick one about the Repat. Of course, I'm prejudiced about this, I admit that, because I worked there for 20-something years and it was a wonderful place. When Jack Snelling knocked Humpty Dumpty off the wall, it looked like it was broken into many pieces and could never be resuscitated. And you 3 and your departments are trying to put some of those bits back together again. Good luck. You're trying, but it'll never be the same. We accept that it's never going to be the same. But what is planned there now is called a health precinct, It's not called a hospital. This place is another precinct. So that's another interesting word. I think we know what it means, and I think we also know what wellbeing means. And you've said, Adam, I think it was Adam who told us about all those factors that lead towards well-being. What does it mean? It means good health. But we've stopped using the word health because well-being seems a catchier word to use. But all of those conditions, all of them, finance, security, whether you work or not, whether you're paid or not, all of those are determinants of health. So it's a health precinct and a wellbeing centre. The difference you can think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for those comprehensive comments. If I could just perhaps provide a couple of responses to your comments and then invite my panel members if they would like to as well. Thank you for raising the really important point around nomenclature. I think particularly around naming and correct recognition of history is really important. So thank you for identifying that, and that's something I would love to have a future conversation with you about. You talk about, you reflected on it being problematic that there are 3 departments with 3 ministers sitting here before you. Whilst that does add a level of complexity, at the end of the day, the veterans community, that's one way of defining community, but also veterans are members of the South Australian community, and by that very necessity touch different portfolios and therefore different ministerial responsibilities depending on their circumstances and at that point in time. So some people in this room and watching us will identify at some points in their life as a veteran first and foremost, and on other times they will want to access services or be engaged as a member of the South Australian community. So I don't see it as problematic. I actually see it as being complex and somewhat powerful to recognise that veterans have a voice in a variety of different domains as well. Did you want to add anything, Bev, to Robert's comments?
Not really. Yeah, I think the nomenclature is an issue, and that this is actually also the Torrance Parade Training Depot is its actual proper title, but the precinct does describe the greater area, and then the building and the parade ground. So, but we can look at how we can improve that.
Yeah, great. And Adam, did you have anything? The second part was devoted to you.
No, I think I'd just reiterate Robert, what you said about the determinants of health. Wellbeing, I think, is being recognised as a term because good health is greater than just going as an inpatient into a public hospital or into an emergency department. And necessarily, if we're going to involve education, employment, housing, then we are talking about a range of different government services across a range of different portfolios. But it is on us to work together. And I think even just by having 3 departments here today, that's demonstrating how we try to do that.
Yeah, great. And helping our veteran community to live their most fulfilled lives in whatever that looks like for each and every individual. So I think unless there are any more questions, I don't have any text messages. Yes, Rick, would you like to take us home with the last question?
Hey, look, I understand about Veterans SA, etc. Bev, it's a question for you. Is that I work for, sorry everybody, Major Rick Clark. I'm the State Manager for Defence Reserve Support South Australia, 40 years, regular army. We run employer engagement activities, and I've attempted to book the Torrance Parade Ground or the drill hall here over the last 5 years. I understand that it has changed over the last 2 years, but prior to that, I would be stopped at the front gate here and said that we could not use the place by the previous gatekeeper that was here. When I rang up the department that was responsible for it, nobody knew how to book this place. So that's one of the problems that you do have, is the lack of information on how you can actually book your facilities, whether it be Torrance Parade Ground or some other venue, but you need to get around that, that people know how to book the venue. I pay thousands of dollars every year to run the Employer Support Awards that the Governor comes to, Police Commissioner, senior ADF officers, etc. And then we get the business community that are nominated to come along. And it would be fantastic if they could come into this building because it is, the basis of South Australia. People left here to go to war, etc. So that'd be very good. So something for you to think about in that case there.
And
That's
yeah.
a good revenue raiser for you too.
Yeah, definitely. And 2 years ago, it was run by a different organisation, and they had a different approach. We're still in the process of getting our governance around the bookings and how that was going to happen in order first, and that's only just kind of got settled. But we're also trying to get our house in order as far as the facilities as well. So we haven't necessarily gone public because we don't want to disappoint. So we're I guess it's word of mouth at the moment, but when we're ready to promote, and I'm sure the Premier and everyone will also want to promote the greater services that are available here, particularly to the veterans but broader community, then that will happen, and we'll make it more available. But in the meantime, yeah, we come see me or talk to Catherine, we can make it happen, because yeah, it's just about the dates being available, and we can work around that.
Great. Now, on that note, that is our hour up of our community conversation. I'd like to thank everybody who made the time to come to Torrance, to the Memorial Hall today, and to all of our viewers who have tuned in as our live stream. This has been recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll also include a couple of links in the comments box to the Veterans Portal, as we've discussed, and you're always welcome to provide feedback to us, either after this event or via our email address, which is veteranssa@sa.gov.au. Our next community conversation will be again in this room on the last Tuesday of May, which is the 25th, from 1 till 2 p.m. So thank you all for coming, and will you join me in thanking Bev and Adam as well?